Hi, welcome to DCO. In this video, I'll be going over more techniques and exercises that can help you understand parametric design and how you can use them for your designs. Now, this particular design was a question that I had from one of my site members, which was creating a door that's fully parametric with outer frame, inside structure, and then a panel on the inside. Now, it's a straightforward tutorial in the sense that I won't be creating any patterns for this, but I'll be going over all of the steps that shows you how to create this. The steps that you'll see here are not just useful for this design, but they'll be useful for many other designs. So I'm excited to share with you those techniques. With that being said, let's jump into the tutorial. And if you have any questions at any point, go ahead and leave them down below. I'd love to answer those for you. So let's jump right in. All right, so first thing we'll do is type in units here because this is going to be a door and the door is going to be in inches. So I'll make sure that I have those units here inside of Rhino and I'll create a brand new file. I'll go to File, New Document, and I'll start with the script. Now this is going to be fully parametric. So what we need to do is create the base geometry. What we'll be using for that is a rectangle or a plane. It'll be a rectangle. So let's start. First component, XZ plane. That's our reference plane for creating our door. The origin is going to be a point. So we'll go here to construct point. This way we can always change the location of where we want the door. So we'll start with this XZ plane on this point. And I actually like to go to a empty point component and run this point through this empty point component so we can change it using set1point later on. Now we'll create our rectangle. Now there's something interesting here and I hope they fix this for the next time. When we create a rectangle, there's rectangle 2 points, rectangle 3 points, or the regular rectangle. I have not seen rectangle from center. So what happens is I can create a rectangle and we'll be using this plane input. So it'll be created here on the XZ plane. Now I'll go here and create a number. So it'll be the width of it is going to be the X and the Y is going to be the height. So it's going to be, let's say 36 inches or 36 units in the X. And then let's say 100 or 120 for 10 feet. We'll create a custom slider. So we'll go 0.50 .120. So 10 feet, 120 inches from 0 to 120, and it will put it at 50. Now we can use this as our height. So we'll just go a 10-foot door by 48. All right. So now starting with this, we need to move it to the center because what happens is if let's say I create a point of where the door is going to be located, I typically would put that in the center so we can move it to one side and the other. So what we need to do is take this and go to a move component and move it in the opposite X direction by half of the length. We'll take this rectangle, plug it into the geometry to move. Then we'll bring in an X component. Now we'll go 48 in the X direction. But notice that it will actually move it away. So now what we need to do is go negative. And you'll see that it goes the opposite way. But now, rather than just negative, we'll go divided by 2. I'm kind of doing it incrementally here. So you see the steps that I take. Division by 2, it will give us a division like it says here. A is empty, B is going to be 2. So whatever you put after the slash will be B. Now I'll hit enter and plug in our vector. Multiply or divide the vector by 2 in the opposite direction. And so now we've basically moved it centered. Now, yes, of course, I can go from here, create a point here, and then create a point down here. But I feel like possibly in the next iteration, this would be something that would be fixed. And it's actually something that can be taken care of fairly easily. Like it can be just this into a cluster. With that being said, I'll take this, disable the preview. And now when we move this, it will be moved from the center. And that's the idea for this design. And so now that we've taken that rectangle, moved it to the correct location, now we're going to take these outside lines and offset them to create a frame. So we'll take this, we'll go to explode, and this is called explode curve into smaller segments. This way, when we take this geometry and we explode it, we now have here, when you hover, it says 4 segments. We're going to have them here. Now what we need to do is be able to pick those independently, but we can't because they're all taken care of inside of this component. To fix that, we're going to go to item or list item. And the cool thing about this is that we only have 4, so we can use this specific strategy or this technique. This segments will go into the list, which means that it picks just one of them. But if we go down here to the plus, we see that we have a plus sign. So we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. And now we have 4 of those line segments in this one that we can use out of each output. Now, this is something that you don't necessarily have to do, but this is how I organize them sometimes, if to kind of show and separate them from this component. So I'll copy this here, create 4 copies of this, and I align them going to this little right hand side, and then this bottom one evenly spaces them out. Now we can plug those in like this. Because now we have this one, the top one, this one, and then the bottom one. I'll actually organize it. It doesn't really matter. As long as when you select them, you know which ones they are. So these bottom 3, those are going to be the ones that we'll use. We'll go here to join curves, and we'll join this one, and this one into one polyline. And the way to check if it works is that you'll hover over this output and it'll say 1 locally defined value polyline curve. Now, let's see if when I bake it, so middle click and then bake, it selects it as 1 solid line. So that's another way to check. You can middle click and then bake, and then I tend to delete it so I don't have a bunch of stuff left over. Now with this, we're going to offset it. We're going to be creating the door frame on the outside. So we'll be taking these curves, offsetting them. Now it's offsetting to the outside, which means that if I offset it to the outside, the door size is going to be larger than what I want. Now that's typically what happens with doors is if you buy, let's say, a 48-inch door, the rough opening or the overall opening for the door is typically going to be larger because you're going to have a frame. So depending on what is more important, the overall dimension, you can offset to the inside or to the outside. For this one, we'll be offsetting to the outside to maintain the door opening itself to be the exact dimension that we have here. Now, we're going to take this offset and this, and we're going to connect them now and join them together into a closed polyline. The way I do this technique is just adding endpoints to these lines. So I'll do this one, tap Alt, create the endpoint for this one. And so we'll be connecting endpoints and starting points using line segments. I'll go here to line, from start point to start point, creating this segment, and then copying this and doing the same thing. So slide it down, tap Alt, and we'll be adding these two. Now that we have these segments and the offsets, we can join them together. So we'll go here to join curves. We'll use the outside one. We'll use this offset. We'll be using, select this line segment, and holding down Shift, we're just adding more of those inputs into a closed or join curve. Now here at the end, it should say to locally define values. And that's what happens when you add a lot of curves holding down shift, is sometimes they'll come in as 4 separate ones. And so you'll only have, it'll say here 2 values, which is not what we want. So when I middle click and bake, we'll have this, and then this bottom one that joins it with this one. So there's an issue here. Oh, okay, I see what happened. So let's unplug this one. All right, let's do that again. So let me check this one, because here I'm seeing that this line segment, I'm going to delete these that I have inside of Rhino. I'm seeing this line segment is good. The offset line segment is good, but we need to flatten the input. So let's go here to join curves. And we'll be joining, not this, because here's what happened. I went from end to end point, and that messed us up. So what happens is I wasn't careful enough. Sometimes I try to go a little quick here to save some time, but endpoint creates this line. Start point and start point creates this line. So what I had was an issue there. And we'll take this, hold down shift, same thing here, and these two. Now, when I look at the output, it says 2 values, so we don't want that. We want to flatten the input. That way, it says 1 polyline. And this will ensure that it's just 1 polyline. So middle click, bake, double check, and yes, that creates a closed polyline. So we can use this as our frame. Now to extrude a solid, we need to do 2 things. We can just extrude it and then cap it at the end, or create a boundary surface. And from here, we can extrude it. Now, depending on how you want to extrude this, there are 2 ways. From the middle, because if you're going to be creating this point, let's say putting it somewhere and then having the door be extruded, sometimes you would want it to be in the center, sometimes you want it to be at the end. Depending on what end use you want for this, I'm probably going to extrude it just in one way. So we'll go using amplitude this way. So we'll go here to take this. We'll go to extrude. And we'll be extruding it in the Y direction. I'll go here to unit Y. Now we'll use a value for the frame size. So we'll go here to 4.5. Actually changed my mind. I want to do it from the middle. So here's the technique. We're going to take this, move it halfway to one side, and extrude it ×2. So we'll take this, we'll go to move this surface in which direction? Well, in the positive Y direction. So we'll go here to Y and create a value for this. So we'll go unit Y is going to be, 4 inches outside. Now what happens is, since we're doing it from the middle, we're going to want to divide this by 2. And I've done this in a few tutorials, and it's one that I use all the time. So 4 divided by 2 goes to one side. It just gets moved and it gets extruded. So we'll go to extrude this surface by Y, but we'll go negative. And you'll see here, it will just extrude it to that same location. Well, if we said ×2, well, now we've gone past and done it from the middle. So we can take this, and we know that that's 4 units to this way, 4 overall. And it's only 1 solid, which means that this middle surface, that there's not 2. Sometimes you could extrude one side, extrude the other side, and union it, but this is better when you move it halfway to one side and by twice as much. Now we have the door frame. Okay, from this point, now we need to create the inside of the door. So what I'll do is I'll take this, we'll leave it here. Let's go back to our joined curve. Okay. And let's also go back to the offset, to the outside, and then there's this curve. Okay. So what we need to do here is take this, go here to close. See if it will do that. No. So what happens is we have to take all of these lines and start creating the door frame. So we'll start with the bottom part. We'll go to Extrude. This bottom line segment up by a certain amount. We'll extrude this curve, plug that into the base. Then we'll go to Unit Z. Now we can plug this into Unit Z and extrude it by a certain amount. So we'll go to 8.50. Cool. Now we can do with this the same thing. We're going to extrude in the negative X and then positive X. So we'll take this, or these two line segments, we'll do one first. We'll do the positive side first, so positive X, and then we'll do negative X. So extrude. This bottom one, which direction? In Unit X. By how much? We'll tap Alt on this to use that slider. We'll go to 3.5. Then I'll do the same thing here. So let me organize this so you can see how they connect. We'll take this, tap Alt, and now go to the next one, which is this one. And now instead of positive, we'll go negative. Okay, lastly, we have the top. So depending on whether you want a different slider for the top or a different distance for the top, we'll go to Extrude. We'll basically take this and get some more space here. Although you can go into that area, I just don't like to. Okay, let's move this up a little bit and do this again. So I'll move this up because the next one I want to be below. So down, oh, I messed that up. So I'll slide this down, tap Alt. Now we'll go to the top. And now we'll use a negative. So essentially creating the outer frame for the door. Now here is the next step. So depending on which one is more critical for you to have, whether it's the bottom band, the side bands, this is where we would subtract one from the other. And let me take a look real quick here on Google. I did a quick search on Google, and typically the side rails do go all the way past and get trim the top and bottom. So knowing that, top and bottom are going to be subtracting this side. So we'll go here to region difference. We'll go from, we want to subtract from these. So we'll add the ones we want, what we want to keep, or so. Okay, let me show you. It's going to subtract B. So if we plug in A, it's going to subtract B, which are going to be the side rails. So we'll do this one, tap Alt, also do the other side rail, or the top and bottom. And now we can plug in both of these because we want to subtract both this side and this side. Now we're going to plug in both of these also, because that's what we'll do for the top. It'll subtract this side and this side. So these that overlap with this, we can subtract one or the other. Basically a Boolean difference, but using regions, which are just closed polylines or surfaces that have a boundary. Let me organize this to keep it clean for you guys. Let's go to now we can take the top, we can take these and disable preview because they're no longer the new ones. These are the new ones. So now here I will decrease top one. You could even make it the same as this one if you want to. Now these regions are just polylines, so we need to once again turn them into surfaces so we can extrude them. Tap Alt, this one. So with that being said, now we need to create the middle part. Now, sometimes there's a middle rail here. It's basically the same steps, but on this one, it's just going to be one panel on the inside because this door is a request that I had from one of the people in my subscriptions, is they want to be able to change the pattern on the inside. And so that's what we'll be doing with this one. So what we need to do is go back here to our overall shape and subtract the side rails. So we'll go here to region difference, use this region, this polyline, and subtract all of the side rails and top rails. So plug this one in, holding down shift, we're subtracting the sides, now we're subtracting the top. And I'll flatten the input, and you'll see that it'll work. What happens is sometimes when you hold down shift and you add different kinds, so like this is an extrusion and this is just a surface, they will sometimes have conflict. And so when you flatten it, that tends to fix the issue. And if you don't want to flatten it like this, you can double click here and then bring in a flatten tree and kind of do it not on the component, but taken care of here. So there are two ways of doing it. Now with this one, we'll go here to boundary surfaces. Okay, so with this, we've set the stage not only with the outside frame, see here, but with our structural portion of the door. Now what we need to do is disable the preview on all of this stuff. Disable the preview on this stuff. Now we need to start extruding from the middle. Now what happens is I have already taken care of that here. As you can see, we have a surface that it's extruded here by 5. And it's already taken care of it from the middle, so it already moves it in one direction and extrudes it by twice as much in the opposite direction. So rather than having to do this all over again, we can double click, bring in a relay. I'll take this, slide it up, tap Alt. Now we are here where we can start with our design. So we want to start with the bottom rail. Honestly, it doesn't matter which ones you start with. I just think that sometimes if I do the bottom one here, it already has that thickness. And if I want it to be the same depth for all of them, I'll copy everything except for the slider. So I'll slide it up, tap Alt. Now we'll do the top. And we'll do this again for the next, these two. And I like to keep them separate. This is also where scripts can get a little bit more confusing, right? Like you'll see, oh, what's all that work? Well, sometimes if you've already taken care of this work, you can copy it multiple times and it will look like, oh man, that's a lot of work, but technically it's the same set of steps done multiple times, okay? I just want to make sure to let you guys know that, because sometimes we look at a script and be like, oh man, this is so intimidating. But once you look into it, you're like, oh, this is the same thing as this, is the same thing as this, is the same thing as this. So understanding one of them can help me understand the rest, and then seeing what it's doing it to, it starts making a lot more sense. So with that, let's go to 2 inches for the door. And the frame is there. Now let's disable the preview on all of this stuff, because when you see it turning dark red, that means that there's probably a few other things that we're not hiding, which means that they're overlapping. So if I disable the preview on this, everything hides. That's good. So, oh, I added 2 onto this one. So this one, and then, shoot. Which one? Ah, it was the wrong one. Okay, so I'll override this one. Hey, wait a minute. Okay, now I confused myself. It's this one needs to go into the top one. Okay, and this one goes to this one, the sides. Then the top, which probably could have gone up here. So top, sides, and bottom. That takes care of the structure. Now, this next step is really what this design was all about, setting the stage for creating a parametric door. And now we have this surface that is what is in question. Now we can easily just create a panel. So we can just take this and the slider, because I do want to have its own thickness. I'll tap Alt, create a copy up here. And this, now it says 2. Well, we'll go to 1. And we'll disable the preview on the original surface. And so now we've created a parametric door that has a panel on the inside. Now it's super simple, right? But the cool thing about this is on the inside, if on where you find this surface, you can create any pattern. And maybe that's something that I can do a follow-up on, is creating a really cool pattern on this door. But let's show what the capabilities of this is. From the center, so we can pick a point, we can now change the size. Okay, now let's move around and pick the side rails. So 3.5, top 5.5, and then 10 at the bottom. Then the distance that we offset, let's see, 1.5. So this is going to be the outer frame. If you want it to be more, typically I think they're 1/2 inch or 3/4 of an inch. And in millimeters, well, I'm not really sure, but you can have these sliders be matching to that. So this frame size would possibly want to match the depth of your wall plus wall material, so it matches the exact depth of it. But let's go to number slider, range. We'll do 3 decimal points. We'll just make this 3.5 plus, we'll go 4.5. Okay, 4.5 for that. Then on this one, it's going to be the depth of the frame. So we'll do 2. And then for the inside, we'll do 1 inch. Now, what I need to do here at the end is take all of these and technically put them into one. Hold on, there's something here. Okay, I just disabled the preview on all this stuff back there. Now, once we have all of this taken care of, there's one last thing. We want to do the door swing, right? So the door swing is going to be from one side or the other. At this point, let's say if you don't have a pattern yet, you would want to have the pattern done before you create the rotation. So this is where it gets a little bit weird because it depends on your end case scenario. So I'll go here to geometry, plug in all of those into geometry. They could also be a B-rep. Now I've been using geometry empty component a lot because it's a lot easier for people to understand. Sometimes B-rep is a weird word. So organize this. Now we have this. All of it goes to this geometry node or location. Now here we'll go to rotate. Notice that it goes from the middle. Why? Because we created the whole design from the middle and the X, Y coordinate system is already there. So we need to go back, look at our line segments here, and pick one of these points. The way to do that is we'll go to endpoints, one of these endpoints that we used. If you see, we have this line segment, we have the start and endpoint. This start point is going to be, we'll go here to point. This start point gets plugged into here. And then here we'll use an X, Y plane. So we know that that's where it will rotate from. Now, we could choose either one, right? One side or the other. That is where it depends, right? So we'll copy both of these because both of these could be the location of where the rotation starts. Now we'll take this, we'll bring in our rotate, and we'll use either one. So either this one or this one. And the rotation angle is going to be determined by this input. Now it's going to be in radians. So if you don't really know how to work with radians, we have to turn it to degrees by plugging in, let's say, whatever radians and turn it into degrees, or the opposite actually, radians. So if we said 45 degrees, turns it into radians, and now it does 45 degrees. But the other trick, angle, degrees. So right click on angle and degrees, and now we can just use this. If it's at 45 degrees, that's awesome. Now we can disable the preview on this and have the door open and close this way. So 90, starting from where that frame is. Here, it's going to be too far because we need to move this point to one side or the other. Now, let's do that. So I think that's something that I possibly didn't foresee. So to move it halfway, it's the same thing as the extrusion. So we're extruding halfway. So let me show you. We'll be moving. We'll start with this point. This one. We'll be moving it in which direction? Well, the depth of the door in the Y direction. So let's go to unit X, actually. It's unit X. Now we'll be moving it. Hold on. What happens is this is at 90, so we got to go to 0. This way, we take care of it the correct way. So move this point in the X direction by how much? Well, if it's 2 inches, we'll be moving it 1 inch. So divided by 2 into the X, and it's actually into the Y. So we could even just use this. So depending on which side, we'll be going to one side and then override this one. Now that we have this, tap Alt, and we'll be doing the same thing to the other one here. So we can now change the location, but notice that there were some adjustments that we had to make. So the hinge has to be at the edge of the door, not at the center. Unless you have like a door that swings both ways, but has a specific hinge here in the middle that allows for that. Now, that's not what we're trying to do here. So this takes care of that door. And we'll just change this from max to 90. This way, kind of ends there. Okay. Now let's try the other one. Now what happens is, if we do the other side, then the swing has to be negative here. So 35. Oh, we'll do this. This is a really, really good place to show you this. So if this is 35 and it's just wrong, well, let's double click and we'll go to minus 90. Because now we can say minus 90 and it will open the correct way. Now, if we wanted to open on the other side, there are other things that we can do, but I'm just showing you how to parametrically just be doing one side. Create a door. Okay, so let's go here. Not minus 90, it's going to be 90. Okay. So we'll keep this at 0. That's just more than anything just to show you how to create a door swing. And so with this, that concludes the tutorial. For the most part, like I mentioned earlier, I wanted to show you how to create the outside frame, the door structure, and the inside panel. Now if I take this one and the rest of the stuff, middle click, and bake, now I can take a look here and move it to the side and see what that looks like. And what I like about parametric design is that it's super accurate and all of the steps have been taken care of. So if you want to change it or create a different size, you can do that. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you found that interesting. I will clean this up and have it available for you under the free section of my website. If you have any questions or ideas, let me know. I'd love to answer those for you. Hopefully you found this interesting. This will probably get you closer to learning more techniques and methods to learn how to use parametric design, because in my opinion, it's one of the most useful things that you can learn, because it's new and we have never been able to do this before, where we can program steps in architecture. So thank you very much for being here, and I hope to see you on the next one.